In this session, we will look at functions. We will not look at, we will just basically understand how we define functions, how do we use them. So we will look at how we can use user-defined functions. See, many of the time you have all these, while you have used print, you have used various other functions. Now, all these functions were actually inbuilt in Python, or you imported them from various libraries. So those were created by someone else. There could be cases wherein you need to create your own function for a particular aspect of a program. So if we have a lines of code, which needs to be run repeatedly at the same instance, we know we can use a for loop or while loop. However, if you want some lines of code to be run at different instances, at different positions in a program, then it's better aspect that you create or you define them in a function, and then you call it, you are use it wherever they. Now, functions that we have, you can have various functions. You can have functions that take in arguments, that does not take in arguments. You can have functions which returns value, which does not return value. Here we will look at a very simple, very function, with simple function to add two numbers, which will take values, and then we will look at how we can look at the two aspects, that is without returning a value or with returning a value. So we will now, let us say you are writing a huge program wherein you want add repeatedly at various places, you want to add two numbers. And so for that, we will now create a function. This is a user defined function because we, the user, are defining it. So how do I create a function in Python? For that aspect, I need to first call the keyword def, that is define, def. So the name for the function is add, and I will now create two variables A and B. So the values which I'm going to create, which I'm going to pass, would store, first value will go in A and the second value will go in B, because my define statement is here. So now I put a colon to tell Python that the definition part is over. Now what the function actually does is to be specified. So now I put a colon, and then I go into the function. Into the function, what I am going to do is I'm going to create a variable C that is going to add the values which are there in A and B and stored in C. And now I can simply say return C. So let me just correct the keyword. Return is a keyword. Now, what basically return does is, or how this function is, the values which is going to come in A and B, they will be added to each other. It will be stored in C, and this value in C will be returned back to the calling statement, or it will be thrown back to the calling statement. So let us say you have now various lines of code are there, somewhere down, let us say line 10. Okay. So how do I call this function? So because this is a function that returns a value, I will now say create a variable d. Now what is d equal to? D is equal to, I need to add say numbers 4 and 5. Now remember, this is just a very basic simple program just to demonstrate how you can use your own user defined function. Because if you if you need to add 4 and 5, you can simply write d is equal to 4 plus 5. But this is to demonstrate how functions can be used. So we will just use the same example here. So d is equal to, I need to add 2, 4 and 5. So by using functions, so I can call the function. The name of the function is add. The values which I want to add, I can specify here 4 and 5. Now here in this case, it is not necessary that you directly specify the values. You can also stop the cursor or stop the program, and these values you can take it from the user also. In this case, anyways, I'm directly passing on these values. So the moment when you execute the statement, so far what Python does is it will understand, okay, so that it will hereby when it encounters the def keyword and then it looks at the statement, so it will understand that somewhere that it will understand this is a function by the name add. It needs two values A and B, and what the operation which are need to be done is anyway specified, but it will not execute it. It will just remember. So when the program goes to line 4, line 5, line 6, and finally when it comes to line 10, and that is when it again encounters add. So when it finds this keyword add, when it finds this word add, what it basically done is Python will now look for where add has been defined. So it is defined in line 1, and these values which is specified as 4 and 5, these values will now go to A will go to 4, and 5 will be stored in B. Inside the functions, the value in A and B will be added, which means 4 and 5 will be added. The value would be stored in C, and the C will then be returned back. Basically, what happens then is this will now change, and here it will be C. So the value which is there in C will now go to D. So this is, we are returning the value, right? This is how it does. So when I run this, now I just need to print D. So I can say print D. I run the code. I can see the output here as 9. Now let us say I have various somewhere in line 14. So now I want to print addition of numbers 45 and 56. Now what is happening is Python, when it encounters add, the value 45 will go to A, 56 will go to B. Inside the function, 45 will be added to 45 and 56 will be added, stored in C, and this value which is stored in C will be returned back. So during execution, you can visualize this like something like this happens. The statement will now then after 45 and 56 has been passed to the add function, later on, this something, the value in C would be thrown back. That is what happens in return. So the value in C, we know 45. Okay, wait a minute. Let me, yeah, 45 and 56. Yeah. So what happens is I get the value 101. How did this one? So 45, 56, that we know the total comes out to be 101. The value which was there in C was thrown back. So here the value 101 comes and it gets printed out. So why two values? Because in line 10, you have line 10 and 11, you are printing out the value of the addition of 4 and 4. And in line 14, you are printing out 101. Somewhere down further, let us say you add 1 and 2. So what happens now is, but obvious. So 1 will go to A, 2 will go to B. Inside the function, these values will be stored in C. 1 plus 2 is 3, and then throw will be thrown back and printed. So these are functions which return values. Now we can modify this function so as not to return a value. So here, instead of C, anyways, if it's a simple program just to display the addition. So instead of returning here itself, I can now say print. What is print? I can now say print the value which is there in C. Correct. So now because I need not throw this back value to some other function or to some other statement, so I need not use this print statement at all. Here now here also when I'm saying add 4 5, because it is not returning anything, why should there's no need for me to pass it on to D. I can simply just call it out, because remember this is a function. Here what is at, it is just going to throw values, but it is not going to return value. It will straight away print out the value. That is how I have defined print here in this case. So 4, when at line 8, now what is going to happen? 4 will go to A, 5 will go to B. Inside the functions, 4 and 5 will be added to each other. The value C will straight away be printed by the function itself. That is why I am not using a separate print function. So when I run this code once again, I am getting 91013. I hope the idea of returning a value and not returning a value is very clear. So these are functions. Now, previously we had looked at functions that returns values. Now these are functions which do not return a value.